Oh my God. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. And it looks like we have a panda in the
I, I
house.
thought I thought we were both dressing up. Isn't it the Halloween show?
Yes.
Did I
I
not get the memo, or did you not get the memo?
I did not get the memo. But I love it though.
All right,
um,
I can't keep this thing on.
I
But
know I'm like,
oh jeez, oh
well,
man,
welcome folks. We want to welcome you back to Cup of Joy Cafe. I'm Carla. Um, and alongside me I have
I'm Chris. We're
Chris.
both from Big Picture Learning.
Perfect. We wanted to kick off today with a few announcements because we have an amazing guest. So I'll let Chris talk a little bit about what we have upcoming in our network.
Yeah. So speaking of Halloween, if you attended Big Bang this summer and got a T-shirt from us, that shirt also doubles as your Halloween shirt. So black shirt, orange letters. I mean, double duty. So if you've got the Big Bang T-shirt and you want to sport it and shout us out on social media, we'd love to see it. We'd love to see all of your Halloween photos that are happening in your Big Picture schools. If you're not part of the Big Picture Network, you can still tag us. We'd love to celebrate Halloween and see all the creativity out there in the network. I also want to remind folks. I still haven't gotten the share screen down stuff, Carla. I don't know how you're working on this, but anyway, I also want to remind folks that today at noon is the first of 3 webinars that we're holding on building anti-racist communities. And hallmark of Big Picture is that we start with students. So our, I don't want to say our guests, our facilitators, our hosts for today are 2 students from the Vermont Student Anti-Racist Network who will be presenting some of the work that they're doing in Vermont on anti-racism. If you wanted to attend that, register for it in advance. The website to do that is bit.ly/buildingarcommunities. Case sensitive, but we'd love to have you there. If you can't make it there today, session 2 is in November, session 3 is in December. Plenty of time to get involved in this. The last thing I want to mention is, again, trying to navigate the share screen stuff. Monday is the day before Election Day. A lot of times we celebrate Election Day every 4 years. Really, it's something that we should be participating in and celebrating every year. So our guest on Monday is Lisa Solomon, who is going to talk about the All Vote No Play playbook. The NCAA has basically signed historic legislation to have all college athletes have Tuesday off, no practices, no games, focusing on voting in their communities. So we're going to welcome Lisa Solomon, who is shepherding that work. Very excited. That's Monday. Cup of Joy Cafe, 11 o'clock Eastern.
Thank you so much,
Man,
Chris.
felt like such a filler there, but it's important stuff.
That's a lot. So thank you. Thank you for removing the banner. Today's theme, we wanted to talk about making an impact doing the things you love. Because our guest does that so well. And I was thinking about like, what is it that I do or like, what impact am I making with what I love? And just my quick answer before I toss it over to you, Chris, I think is around just being part of Big Picture Learning because I am an alum and I've always been in education and I love making an impact in the classroom. That's what I did when I taught, but I knew there was always something missing. And just to be back in the family that I kind of graduated from and find my identity, my education identity in, I think is super impactful. And as you can see, I'm hoping to make an impact now. What about you, Chris?
I mean, we're going to have similar answers, but my sort of way into the answer is a little bit varied because you came from a big picture school. I didn't even know about big picture until about 7 years ago. I have a teaching license in the state of Colorado. I'm a teacher dropout because I was not really interested in teaching after my first year and a half of doing that. And I feel like if I had known about the Big Picture Network, I probably would still be a teacher in a big picture school today. So doing what I love is having discovered the Big Picture Network later on in my professional life and kind of having the opportunity to do the work that I think I could have done from the get-go. Definitely from a different angle. I'm a communications specialist and not an educator, but
Mhm.
I feel very privileged to be involved with the Big Picture Network.
Gotcha. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for sharing.
for sure.
Um, and I'm so happy to be working alongside you as we make
Oh,
an
thank you. Same.
So today's guest is someone that I met when I was an undergrad in an education class at UC Berkeley. And just her charisma is the one thing that really, I think, stood her apart, but also just her story in the fact that I knew that she loved sewing because that's like one of the few things you learn about Sarah. But seeing the work that she's done post college, and she also got her graduate degree at Harvard, amazing, is like, I'm just blown away by the impact that she's having in our communities. So I want to welcome Sara Trail, who's the founder of the Social Justice Sewing Academy. So welcome, Sarah, and the floor is yours to answer the question about, how are you making an impact doing the things you love?
Well, thank you, Carla. Honored to be here. Carla is definitely one of the closest friends I had during my undergrad time. And Chris, excited to check in with you. I've heard such amazing things from the Big Picture Learning Network, from Carla's experience through high school to the ideologies that you guys are shaping is training and reframing networks for current schools. So really excited to be here. Definitely hope if anyone's coming to the California Art Ed Association conference in Anaheim next weekend, we can all tap in. But I'd say how I'm doing a difference with something I love. For those who don't know, the sewing community is primarily made up of white women aged 65 and older with 3 sewing machines and an average income of $82,000. That was from like a Sewing Standard Network, like publishing report they published. But more importantly, I'd say the sewing, and I could even extend it into the quilting community more specifically, really upholds a lot of systems of white supremacy and what art is valued and who gets access to art. The entry to, there's not a low entry to barrier. It's really expensive to get started. What kind of quilts are deemed important enough to hang at quilt shows, who gets to run patterns and who has fabric lines. It's definitely run and catered to, I'd say, generally more so conservative white women. And that's just, that's who's a quilter. I mean, at the end of the day, it costs more to make a quilt than it does to buy a blanket. So the purpose of sewing, particularly in the art form of quilting and or art quilting, has really dwindled just because sewing is no longer in most public schools, unfortunately. And really the cost to entry is just extremely high. So with that being said, I started SGSA as a brave space where young people could have access to high caliber sewing and quilting instruction, but really make art about what matters to them, kind of pushing the boundary on whose art is valued, whose voices should be heard in these spaces, and what does quilting really look like. Because if you Google quilting, the traditional Google image isn't necessarily, a bunch of young people making art on things that matter to them. And it's kind of unlearning some of the rigidity that sewing teaches in the sense of we start sewing with art quilting and then we move backwards. If you wanted to learn more traditional skills, we can teach you that too. But really, we start with the foundation of how freeing sewing can be and how open the art form can be if you use it as that, an art form. So kind of combining those two things. I'd say more specifically, some of the new projects we're doing. There's two. We have one project called the Remembrance Project, which is very much like 21st century AIDS quilt, but we're doing it with a much brighter audience. People who've been killed from LGBTQIA discrimination, law enforcement, community violence, and racially motivated violence. And as you can see, there's a bunch of blocks that people are making. So we have a name database right now of over 6,000 names of people who've been murdered. And as people sign up to make a block, we assign them the name and they sit with the name, they do research on the name, they find out what happened, and they make a memorial quilt block that really just honors, that person that they've been given. And then they send us the quilt block back. And with a team of Bay Area dedicated volunteers, we piece the quilt blocks into banners, and then we get them displayed at community events from the families that are featured in the blocks. So it can be, a trans woman's right, march that they're doing of trans women awareness. And then they might want 50 banners of people who are trans or non-binary who've been murdered. Or it could be a BLM protest. They'll want 50 banners, people killed by police. Or it could be, just a call to awareness in the park, and they'll say, we just want our person's banner and 100 people's others banner. And as you look at the banners and as you read their statement, you really find out there's a lot of underlying mental health problems that were the cause and reason of a lot of these deaths. and obviously not a reason, because no death is ever justified or valid, but like you can just understand that the stigma of mental health crisis was murdered and unarmed, mental health crisis was killed, mental health crisis. So I think, you know, the intersectionality of the project is definitely rising a few heavy themes to the front. But in addition to making art for this community project, we're also making custom quilts for the families. And that's just a free custom gift that we're giving if any of the families reach out and or want to host the art. And in that process, the families are giving us clothes, whether it's beanies, you know, jeans, t-shirts, anything from these victims whose lives were stolen from them. And then when we take the clothes, we pair it with a quilter and we get these families custom quilts worth thousands of dollars, depending on the design the quilter chooses to do, at absolutely no cost. And it's really kind of a model of building an anti-racist mindset in quilters to want to volunteer their time, talent, and most importantly, their resources in gifting some of these communities they might not know firsthand, you know, a gift made with clearly a lot of love, patience, and time.
That's amazing that y'all are doing this, and what a way to honor someone's life. I also know that you just put out a really cool project, or you just tell us about that.
Yes. So in making the project, it was getting a lot of, you know, kind of wanting to share it. And so I thought one of the easiest ways to share it, let's just write a book and kind of share what we're doing and how we're doing it. So we published this book. It's called Stitching Stolen Lives. And it talks not only about the origin of the project, but really kind of about the racial awakening and really the movement we need to do to push sewing into a more inclusive space, into a more diverse space, into a more, you know, young people welcomed, into a more, you know, all binaries welcomed, and really shares a bit about the banners and really their statements, because a lot of it is just about amplifying voices of the historically marginalized and excluded. And so in this book, it's really about sharing the microphone. So while I wrote a lot, like, I mean, obviously I wrote a lot of it, but I'd say a lot of it is really just families who wanted to share their story. And I think what I've learned a lot in this project is the last, like, final moments of their life are always the most publicized. So when someone dies, how they die and who killed them is always what's known. But little do we find out what was their favorite color, what was their favorite, you know, sports team, what did they like to do, who they were as a person. So I really think the book is kind of like the social justice sewing version of Humans of New York. Because I love Brandon, but it's really about telling the stories of who these people were outside of the final moments that media has trauma sensitized and you know, just inflicted all over the internet. So it's really about kind of letting these families hold the microphone and amplify what they want to be known about their loved one, besides the last, you know, final minutes of law enforcement or community or some or domestic violence killing their loved one.
Wow. I'm speechless. I can't. Well, congratulations to you, one, first of all, for doing this, right? Like, this is you're making an impact. You're demonstrating that something that you love, you can not only do it for yourself, but you can do it for thousands, if not millions, of other people out there. And so we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We shared your Instagram. We shared, I mean, if folks want to purchase the book, you have it right there. Is there a preferred shop that you want to send folks to? Your website, right?
Our website is cool. Amazon is definitely faster. Anything else, but I'm not necessarily the biggest Amazon fan. But
Well,
if you
go to the
Prime,
website. Yeah.
but no, or really a lot of local bookstores have it too. But I would definitely, even if you don't sew, it's definitely not a how to sew book. It's really just a beautiful textile coffee table art book of, you know, a lot of stories that have really been under-recognized.
And I know that this, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say shortly you can expect to get an order of 3, Sarah, because I know I want one. I know Carla wants one. And also I'm gonna buy one for any guest that's currently watching this and says in the comment section of either Twitter or Facebook, send me a copy. We'll send one to at least one of our viewers. So let us know if you want a copy, because we're gonna have an extra one.
Perfect. And with that, thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate you. And I know that we're going to collaborate in the future. So
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Bye. Awesome. Wow. I love this girl. I swear. Sarah's bae. Okay.
I don't know if folks noticed this. I know the lead was buried a little bit. On the cover of Sarah's book,
yeah,
a couple of fours there. Hillary Rodham Clinton and Reverend Jesse Jackson. I think there might also be one by Brian Stevenson. I think Sarah shared with us. So, I mean, it's just, there's some legit credentials. Like Sarah represents herself, but there's some people that are holding up this work very importantly. So kudos.
And with that, folks, we will see you on Monday. Thank you so much for joining this episode of Cup of Joy Cafe. And I hope you make it a great day or not. The choice is yours. See you later.
Happy Halloween.